Hey everyone, welcome back to Automation. So before we get going today, I just wanted to say the channel is surprisingly close to 50k and that is extremely exciting. So if you would help me get there, I'd love to hit 50k today. Let's make it happen. So subscribe to this channel and let's get into the actual video. So 2 weeks ago I made this Opel, actually it's not an Opel, it's a Holden GT drag car for my drag race showcase. That as of today is closed, and next week is going to be the stream for it, so be sure to check that out. But last week I also streamed the creation of this beast. It's Sweet Tooth's van from Twisted Metal, specifically the first game, except not a box van, it's just a regular van, and it does have this hideous face on it as well, so that's what happened before. Today we're going to try and do something a little bit nicer, because the reason that I made this thing in the first place on stream was because I didn't have time to make a regular video. I was camping with my family, and so I decided today we're going to be making the ultimate adventure vehicle, something that can be useful in camping trips like the one that I took just 2 weeks ago. So let's get into it. So the thing about saying that something is the ultimate, it kind of implies that it's like the end all, be all, best of type thing. It's the one to get for any sort of adventure, but I think that's kind of impossible because the reality is that your adventure is going to vary significantly depending on what you're doing, and that is also going to determine what kind of vehicle you want. At the moment, I think I'm going to make an SUV, but I mean, we would possibly need something with super wide tires or tracks if we wanted to go for a snow adventure, as an example, or maybe a desert adventure. But if we're not going for something like that and we're just driving on the highway, then those things are not going to work out very well. So the name of the game here is kind of to find a specific balance. This vehicle needs to be capable off-road. It needs to be something that can hold a decent amount of weight. It can't be too big because big vehicles don't necessarily fit in all places, but it also can't be too small because then it's not going to be able to carry your stuff. The ideal thing would be a Jeep, or maybe this is a Jimny body, but we can use it as a Jeep if we wanted to, but I have done that before. So this time I actually thought I would make it a little bit different and make a crossover adventure vehicle, I guess. Ultimate crossover adventure vehicle, if that's even possible. So immediately before starting out, I'm kind of noticing that this looks more like a wagon than an SUV. So this sort of build is changing as we speak, but not to be worried. I'm going to try to be semi-realistic here. We're going to go steel, we're going to go monocoque chassis, and we'll make the chassis material out of galvanized steel. Maybe corrosion resistant would be best. Here's where things get controversial. Let's do transverse with double wishbone on the front and probably double wishbone on the back. Pretty sporty setup, but we do want to be able to actually get to these adventures on the highway, and yeah, we need relative comfort in doing that. Obviously we could just twist things up and go coils and solid axles and all that stuff, but yeah, we're gonna go all-wheel drive transverse with double wishbone. We'll see how it works. Okay, engine wise, so when it comes to an adventure vehicle, some of the things that are important, like say you're going off camping somewhere, you don't really want to have a modified engine necessarily, because if you break down in the middle of nowhere, the odds of you getting specialty parts for your modified engine are particularly low. Ideally, you just want to pick a car with a good base engine and then leave it stock or close to stock. Obviously, if that engine has an inherent flaw, then you're going to want to fix it because you want to be as reliable as possible. In this case, I was thinking of doing a V6, but I'm actually just going to do an inline 4. And I do want to do turbo, but obviously that's maybe not the best. Turbos generally require higher octane, and I mean, they can be tuned not, but I mean, turbos, higher octane, it almost always works out better that way. But you might not find that gas everywhere, so ideally, maybe diesel, especially if you're not in North America, diesel would be best, but here, I think you'd find gas a little more easily. Right, so, I mean, I almost always turbo things. I'm gonna go NA, but we're gonna make it a big I4. And I guess relatively square as well. Not super square, but pretty darn square. Let's do a 2.4 liter. Okay, it's not as square as I said it was going to be, but we should be able to get decent torque with this setup. It's not going to rev super high, but that's okay. I'm going to do overhead cam with 4 valves, and I'm going to make the head out of aluminum as well. So it's a double aluminum engine, nice and light ideally, and it will hopefully be reliable. Whenever I'm making an engine like this, I'm always thinking in the back of my head, like, how much power do I want? And this ideally will make like 190, 200 horsepower, somewhere in there. It doesn't have to be crazy, it just has to be enough. Let's give it VVL and VVT. Okay, this is contradicting all my previous statements because this is complicated, but it's fun. No turbo, I am crying right now. But we can go for direct injection. I guess single configuration, we'll see what that looks like. Yeah, that's reasonable. That's unreasonable. So I'm gonna go single intake with a variable intake as well on it. This is very funky looking. I don't think I've ever used this before, but you know what? Let's do it. Regular gas is important, so we're gonna leave it just right there, and everything else we can come back to. Let's do short cast headers, nice and simple, and realistic exhaust. 2-inch is probably good with, I don't know, will we be kind to the environment? Maybe. Okay, 143 horsepower, and our pistons and conrods are dying on the inside, quite literally on the inside. What can I do to get more power? 6,500 RPM rev limit is not quite as realistic as I would like. We should be, well, maybe somewhere here, 7,000-ish, but that's just going to cause problems unless I do something. So with the goal of making this thing dead nuts reliable, I decided to up it to lightweight forged, and I've changed the setup. Basically, it's still a 2.4 liter, but it is a big bore, small stroke, still very close, but it just means that we are more reliable at high RPM. I just don't want to make this into a Cadillac engine from the 70s, so what I'm thinking is we go for a little bit more on the VVL profile. This being higher is a good thing. Well, theoretically at least, and this should be lower. Our exhaust is fairly restrictive, which is probably causing problems, but no worry about that. We can just increase the size. That would be approximately 3-inch exhaust, which is pretty aggressive for a crossover, so I'm just going to leave her right there. 250 horsepower seems like a pretty reasonable amount with this engine, without stressing it out, of course, so that's not bad. I think it's going to be enough to move it decently. It doesn't have torque problems or anything like that. It seems to just be an overall decent sized and then decent powered engine, but obviously I'm going to try and get a little more. So the only thing now that's really restricting it is the header setup. You can see we could jump all the way up to 187 by switching that, but sticking for semi-realistic setup here, 171 horsepower, just with a little bit of a tweak of the cam profile and VVL profile, means, I'm so used to hitting the turbo thing, but it basically means that we have a pretty decent setup here. 171 horsepower, 195.1 Newton meters. I think this engine is good to go, so let's give it a little bit of paint, and we'll see if that's enough power to move this big, well, maybe not so big, adventuring beast. We can also give it a holographic valve cover, which is probably the coolest thing I have ever seen. Okay, I just made it iridescent because, of course. So much for realism. I'm throwing that right out the window. Okay, this body comes with a ton of options. There is the wagon/van edition of it, which is awkward and not quite what I'm after. So we're going back. Hopefully, yeah, this is the one. It's basically a car but lifted. It looks like a BMW 3 Series. I've made some mistakes today, but we're sticking with this one. I'm going hardcore on this. So fenders a little bit out. We want some wide wheels. And then basically we want to get as much length as we can, so moving the entire back further back, and then I don't know, I got a couple other small tweaks to do here. The less 3 Series it looks, the better. Not saying that the 3 Series is bad, but you know, we gotta be unique. So color is an interesting thing to think about with this, because if it's white it won't attract heat as much, and say you're in the hotter area, then you're probably not going to want it to be a source of heat, especially if you're sleeping inside. But white also gets dirty really easily, and it shows the like mud and stuff that you pick up quite obviously on it. So in my mind, dark colors aren't bad, but you almost just want like an off gray or something, ideally. For me, I think I'm going to try forest green because I do tend to like British racing green style or darker. I just think that looks good for camping, but I don't know. Blending into the forest is something I value apparently. So our last car was gray, and that means I'm going to have to do this one myself a little bit differently because I just want it to be a little more unique. So I'm going for like a grayish green, somewhere in between gray and green. It should give it a little bit something, a little bit of something extra on there to make it a little more interesting. So hopefully it turns out good. But we're going to go black trim, black wheels probably, and then like a mattish gray paint texture. Looks pretty good. Ultimate forest adventure vehicle, here we come, because that doesn't look too bad. Okay, I'll admit I've basically just made a BMW SUV slash wagon, mostly wagon for now, but I'm just slowly adding details. I was actually having a lot of trouble with the front end, so I may just look up what an actual BMW looks like and then copy that, because I mean they're good looking cars, so no need to complain there. I picked out some wheels. I haven't done the actual tires yet, but those wheels just look perfect for this sort of application. It reminds me a lot of the Subaru, I think it's Crosstrek, or possibly the Forester that has some very similar wheels to this. However, my idea is basically give it some normal trim and stuff like that, get it looking like a car, and then just start doing some crazy off-roading type stuff to it. Not too crazy, but just crazy enough to give it some off-road prowess. Obviously, when we get into BeamNG, I'm going to be attempting to do some off-roading with this, so we'll see how well that goes. So one thing that I'm going to do to try and set this apart a little bit from just being your run-of-the-mill SUV is, well, we have some off-road trim pieces. We also have the possibility of making the entire bottom end of it out of plastic, and that's what I'm going to try and do. You see that a lot with a lot of modern vehicles, so let's see if I can't just do something similar. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit because I'm just trying to put some flares on there, and they're not quite done, so don't worry too much about that mark there. But what I want to do is kind of figure out what wheels we need to put on this car. So it currently has, now that I just put them on there, all-terrain tires. Chunky off-road is also an option, but I kind of think that that's too much. All-terrain is probably our best bet to sort of mix that like highway driving, but also having reasonable fuel economy and not being absolute garbage. So our chunky off-road tires are not going to give us much in terms of on-road traction. All-terrain is kind of a compromise in between. That's what I think is our best bet. Wheel size is also important. They're currently 245, which is fairly small. We could go up to like 285. That's pretty big. Maybe 275 front and back. That's should be decent. With a little bit of this old offset, we should be able to get something that looks a lot more aggressive. So the rims are 19s. I want to make the wheels themselves a little bit bigger so we get a little bit more ground clearance. You can see the tire size there. That's fairly realistic, so I think that should work. Obviously, my gut reaction is to go 20s, but I think 19s are better. I mean, ideally, we would have like 17s, but they just look so small. I've skipped ahead again because suspension is kind of necessary. This being more of a, I mean, at this point, it's a BMW SUV, so we're going to go active sport suspension. We could go air, but I feel that maybe having gas monotube active sport is our best bet. Look at all that. Oh my goodness, we finally have stuff in the green. That is very unusual for me. However, once I hit this, that might change. So yeah, giving it a normal preset is fairly decent. It just means it's going to be relatively soft. We could go off-road and go mega soft, but we don't want to go too much, and you can see what happens to the ride height in that case. One of the cool parts about doing double wishbone is we can also absolutely slam the thing, but I mean, we're not going to be able to do much off-road with this, at least not without getting damaged. So finding that balance is what I'm all about, and in this case we go normal, then we go a little bit higher and we say good enough. Okay, so I gave it some flares, but they're so massive that I don't like them, which is a problem. But I'm going to continue with the side trim. I might just not do full flares. It's just not quite coming out the way I want it to. Okay, so I've gone ahead and added a bunch of stuff, basically just making it a little bit more SUV-esque, trying to make it reasonable looking because that's the goal. I mean, I'm always trying to make cars decent looking, and sometimes it's not very easy, but today, not too bad. However, I did add some mud flaps. I mean, I used to drive a Subaru, so it makes sense that I would add mud flaps. What I'm thinking now is, I need to do a bit of a cutout first. Even though this car doesn't actually have dual exhaust, I'm putting it on anyways because style. Fake exhaust is a thing these days, and I'm fully embracing it today. Okay, so remember when I said I needed to finish the front and the back before I actually did anything? Well, that's too bad because it's time that I did something. I'm gonna go ahead and make a fancy roof rack. We do have quite a few options for that in here if I can find them, but we have stuff like winches and control boxes and such. We've got different trays and different bumpers and things I can use. We've got snorkels, tires. I'm excited for all of the possibilities, and yes, this is the roof rack spot. So let's put some stuff on it. So this is a bit of a diversion, but I decided I'm doing a rooftop tent. So that's what's going on right now. Basically, we have a roof rack and then another rack and then a rooftop tent on top of that, just kind of assuming that this ultimate adventure vehicle can actually hold one. Kind of an important assumption. And also, I think it'd be kind of cool. Well, one thing I gotta do is paint this, but there's awnings and boards and stuff. There's a lot of extra pieces in here that I want to try to fit. So let's see if I can do that. I'm also going to add a skid plate to the front, just because I think it'll look cool. We're going off-road, baby. So one thing I'm not sure about with these rooftop tents is if you can put anything on top of them. I assume you probably shouldn't, so I'm not going to. But I'll just... yeah, I don't know. Well, we've got the awning. We can put this stuff on the sides. See, if this was a pickup truck, we'd have our tent over top of the bed, and then we'd fill the bed with all of our stuff. But in this case, I guess we'll just put it on the back glass, maybe? Something like this, perhaps? I've also got things like ski boxes and stuff. Like, we can go pretty much all out if we want to. Ski box on top of a roof tent, on top of a, I don't know, we'll put a Mini up here. There's gotta be a bike mount somewhere, otherwise I'm gonna have to make one. So I'm going a little bit grill crazy right now, and I'm attempting to make something that's scarier than it should be. But don't worry about it too much, or me too much, because my master plan is all coming together, and that basically is trying to make this the ugliest thing possible, and so far I've been highly successful. Okay, maybe not the absolute ugliest, but I'm going for something pretty significant. It needs to be fairly close to the ugliest thing ever made. That basically looks like every single complicated front end on a new vehicle these days, and I hate it. But it's actually gonna work out perfectly for this. I'm not done yet. I have some more grills to put on there. Don't you worry. I'm not super sold on the nudge bar yet, but I really would like to put one on there. So we might have a nudge bar version. These things are actually really useful. They're not particularly aerodynamic or anything, or particularly pedestrian safe, but you know, sometimes you just gotta slap one on there. That's almost enough lights, but now, as you can see, I've added some auxiliary fog lights because I think they look pretty good. I just need to change one thing on here, and I think we might be getting close to being done with the very busy front end. It does need a badge, and it does need some random writing on the inside of it, so let me just make up a new brand name right now. That's right, folks, this is a BMW. Haha. I've tricked you this entire time. The ultimate off-road vehicle, apparently. Yeah, BMW. Alright, I'll admit that this scoop does not make any sense, but it just makes this thing look that much more aggressive, and I like it, so it's staying. This BMW Jungler M5 is what I'm calling it, is one of the most busy vehicles I've ever made in this game, and I'm really enjoying what's happening here today. So, yeah, I mean, there's some small touches to be done on the front. We still need to do a little bit more off-road gear, and then I think it's just going to be off into BeamNG. So let me get back to you once I get to the back end. Okay, this actually looks like a BMW now. This is not quite what I had intended. I'm looking at a 2010 BMW X5 and I'm copying it basically. Not entirely, I'm just trying to get the general gist of the light shape, and then from there we're going to be working. So yeah, some other changes have been made. It's a little bit too much commitment maybe. The thing is, and this sort of bothers me now that I've done this, this thing looks quick. Like, it looks like it's got a big turbo or something, or a little bit more than what's actually hanging out under the hood. So we're gonna go back under the hood in a couple minutes, make a couple of tweaks just to give it a bit more power, I think, and we'll go from there. It's modified now, it's not just stock. So things have happened, and it now has my name on a license plate on it. BMW, please do not sue me for making crappy knockoffs of your vehicles. I promise I will do it again. Okay, that's the back end complete. It's time that we did a little bit more to some of the other parts of this. So the front end, not really BMW-ish, but the back end, very BMW-ish. I don't know what happened. Things are going on right now, and as time is passing, I don't know words. So I'm not going to build an interior today because I've spent 2 hours doing this, but if you're interested, I can come back and do more with this one. I feel like a hypercar version of it would be really cool, so maybe that might be an option for the future. What I'm thinking now, though, is let's get this thing wrapped up and get it ready for BeamNG. It does need a couple touch-ups, just ignore that backwards M, but everything else is looking pretty mint. Now, I was going to make a bike rack for it as well. That is something I still want to do. Effort. Okay, let me do something quick. Alright, I think that's everything. We're missing just one piece, literally. We need a big shotgun sticking out of the hood, or maybe just like strapped to the front, just like that. You know how it is. You gotta keep your weaponry close to the engine. That's a joke for now. I think it's time that I moved on because I'm losing my mind. I did add these little rock pieces there, so I guess if you get stuck you can climb up using that, and they're kind of attached to the back, although that makes it so you can't open the trunk, which is very practical, so yeah, don't worry about it. Okay, on to the rest of the drivetrain. Now, I did say I wanted to make a little bit of an engine change, and that change is I'm just going to cut the exhaust off entirely, which should give us a decent amount more horsepower and a little bit more RPM as well. You can see the crank is being slightly worn by that, so I'm just going to increase the quality until that disappears, which is +4. So yeah, there you go. 179 horsepower, a little bit extra without any exhaust, and I just think that'll be cooler. The headers are still very restrictive. I'm just gonna put the tubular on there. 197, there was our original goal, so 200 horsepower. Is 200 horses gonna be enough to move this thing properly? Maybe not. This really does need a V6 and maybe possibly a V8, but at this point I'm gonna stick with it. I'm gonna stay reliable. I'm gonna say, you know what, this M5 or MX5, whatever it is sticking to the 4-cylinder roots and not going too hardcore, at least in this version. So I'm going all-wheel drive with an advanced auto. Scream and cry all you want, this is my choice. 9-speed because I figure, I don't know, we want decent highway fuel economy. We have a big sail on top. Whatever, 9-speed. Apparently we can do about 230 something. We'll figure that out in a bit. LSD, again, we need a diff in there, otherwise this thing is just going to spin one wheel as soon as we go off-road, and that's going to suck. I've got the power distribution very heavily to the front. I think I'm going to change that just a little bit to the front to balance it out. But again, it is front engine, front wheel drive primary with a transverse inline 4. So that means the rear wheels are only there for a little bit extra boost. Wheels and stuff, I think we already went through that. I believe that's probably as good as it is going to get. I like the sizing and all that. It looks pretty good to me, just overall, so it doesn't really matter about all this, as long as it looks good. Brakes, yeah, are we actually stopping? Apparently not. I have the brakes as big as they can be, at least at the front, and it's not enough. Apparently this thing might weigh a decent amount. 2,144 kilos. Oh boy, is she heavy. Alright, I just put an off-road skid tray on the aerodynamics. Interior, it's got 5 seats, open back, so we can have more stuff in it. heavy interior. I mean, I put a sport interior in it with a premium HUD, so it's got some decent stuff. And then obviously the best driver safety and all that we can get. I'm going to try to optimize it to be a little bit lighter. We can see the car's weight right there. Maybe if we can get it under 2,000 kilos, that would be nice. Because right now the power to weight ratio is not ideal. So there we go. Very optimized for lightness. It's basically just an automation change, but it's going to cost a lot of money in the game. I'm not too worried about it though, realistically speaking. So we have no trouble with wheel spin. I'm going to actually lengthen the gears because 50 kilometers in first gear seems kind of nuts. That's fairly slow, I mean, so we'll make the gears a little bit longer, a little bit taller. We have 9 of them, so hopefully, actually, you know what, now that I think about it, 9 gears. I'm just going to go right back to the base. I don't really know how to tune a 9 gear. When I'm thinking about this stuff, I think about my manual Tibron. It's a 5-speed. In first gear, I can get up to maybe 50, 60 kilometers before it's like bang, bang off the limiter. I don't do that very often, but that's sort of my basis for these whenever I'm tuning a 5-speed or 4, somewhere in there. So I try to keep first gear at that. It's relatively short gearing on that car. This car has incredibly short gearing, but it does have 9 of them, so hopefully that's enough. So in terms of tuning the wheels, I don't care about this. It's very off-road premium setup, so it should be decent. Brakes, again, we're good. All this. Safety we talked about. Suspension we talked about. I don't think I'm going to do any tweaks here. It's time to take this thing to BeamNG and see how it drives. And also how it sounds, because it's an uncorked, naturally aspirated 2 1/4 I'm losing my mind. 2.4 liter 4-cylinder, and I'm hoping that it actually sounds decent with a lot of lightness. So yeah, maybe it'll actually drive. Alright, so here is our BMW M5X, I guess, or I guess they call it the X5M. I believe that's the actual name for them. It took me 2 hours to figure that out as I've been doing this, but don't worry about it too much. It's time to drive. So this thing sounds horrible, like the exhaust cut did not do me any favors, but we're gonna take a turn here driving around what is called the Small Island USA. Now this map is mostly just dirt. I think it's going to be perfect for this vehicle. It's, I don't know, it's a camping vehicle by nature. That's the entire point of it. So let's go find a camping spot, just drive around and see what works best for this. We're in comfort preset. I'm going to stick to maybe a sport, see what happens with that. I don't expect too much wheel spin. We are all-wheel drive, but we don't have any diff locks or anything like that to mess with manually. It is really going to just be about whatever the system decides is reasonable. So while this thing sounds like a go-kart, it is a big SUV. I mean, it's fairly large. It feels large. It is a wagon, but just on stilts. At the end of the day, it has enough power. It's not exactly a powerful beast, though, and it's definitely better for these sort of trails than it would be if I attempted to use it for rock crawling. I've already broken it. You can see from that we've actually lost the bull bar. It's hanging out on the ground over there. But if I bring that back, we're pretty much all to normal. I do want to try a little bit of rock crawling, a little bit of light rock crawling maybe. There are some boulders around here we could attempt, but trails really do seem like this thing's best option. And I mean, if you see a summit or something you want to get to and you're like, yeah, I am going to attempt that, you can probably get there with this as well. It does have a little bit of off-road shops hidden within it. So like up here by this rock, pretty high point, lovely area. You could definitely stop if you can find a more level position without one wheel hanging off of something like this perhaps, and lose the bull bar again and get a nice view of the island as a whole and also the water. But there's a peak up there, so I think we should probably attempt that. Alright, onto the peak we go. I'm gonna take this one like a rally stage. Driving, actually, does this... Oh, it has sport mode. Ooh. Oh yes, that's exactly what we need. You can see that the lights are a little bit butchered. I also didn't make the bottom ones the running lights that they're supposed to be. Don't worry about it. Things are more than funky with automation exports into BeamNG when it comes to lights. They don't always work out quite the way you anticipate. Also, I've absolutely taken a wrong turn. I'm going to turn myself around aggressively and head on back as we bounce our way over there. There seems to be a little bit of a landing up there we might be able to get to. So the suspension with the normal preset is fairly soft, which is good. We want it, like, we want to have something that's fairly soft but not like overly soft. The off-road preset is overly soft, so that's why I went normal this time. Bouncing around like this though, no problem at all. This is going to get a little bit trickier as we get close to the summit though, if I remember this island correctly. And a beautiful scenic tower with a water jug next to it. I guess if you want to, you could camp near this if it's allowed, but we're not quite at the spot yet, boys. Let's go. Turn around this corner. Things are getting a little bit sketchy. And here, I believe, is one of the roads to the summit, the trickier of the two. We're going to take this without the bull bar, apparently, because it's gone out the back, and see if I can't just do something with sport mode in this. A little bit of crawling, nothing too crazy, though. Yeah, I mean, for what it is, it's not bad at all at this. If you are willing to ditch the bull bar at every single bump, then, yeah, this is the ultimate adventure vehicle. And if you look closely, we have made it all the way to the top of the hill in the small island USA, which is a little bit easier said than done sometimes, depending on what you're driving. However, this looks like a pretty good spot to camp for the night, don't you think? Alright, so that trailer hitch is not pointless. We are going to do something with it. I'm sure this video is bloody long at this point, but I do want to try a quick off-road test on some of the obstacles around here, and then we're going to flail around with the trailer a little bit because I don't put trailer hitches on things for no reason. So let's take on this one here. Shouldn't be too tough, I don't think. Just a few dips here and there, nothing too crazy, a little bit of water on the nose, but I think this is going to be our real challenge. Obviously we don't have Jeep level ride height, but we do have all-wheel drive and decently grippy tires. Good amount of power, decent amount of torque. A little bit of slippage in the front, but when I hammer the throttle down, it's actually taking it like a champ. Very nice. That is much better than I thought it would do, to be honest with you. Let's maybe try something a little harder. So this is a deep crevice. I almost said crevasse, but yeah, crevice. Words don't usually vibe well with me. Let's try to get over it. Actually, this is easier than the last obstacle. Unless, of course, I fail, in which case it was significantly harder. Boom! Easy. Okay, just driving around the grid map, you can kind of get a sense of the speed. It's slow. Like 0 to 60, which in this case, I mean, this is kilometers, so 0 to 100 is a couple of seconds. It's going to be like under 10 probably. That's reasonable for a car. Maybe not a high performance one though. Definitely doesn't fit the description of M, at least not yet. By the way, if you made it this far in the video, please let me know what you think of this. Is it ugly? Is it beautiful? Which part do you like the most? The front, the back, the top? Give me your ideas for future builds. I kind of came up with this one today. I've been running out of good build ideas. Okay, I've destroyed it. You know I had to do it to him. It's time to take over the small trailer, because if it can't pull a trailer, it's not the ultimate adventure vehicle. You could probably ditch the rooftop tent in this case, because you've got a trailer to sleep in. But, I mean, we may as well just take advantage of the trailer hitch in its current form, slap a big rig on there, and you can kind of see how it works. So the weight of the trailer is causing a little bit of a dip in the lower, or in the rear suspension. You can see that it's down a little bit more than it was, but that's not a bad thing. That's realistic. So let's get into sport mode, try and join with the highway. Very high revving. This engine actually does rev pretty high, now that I think about it, like 7,800 RPM, something like that. That's pretty good. 100 kilometers right there, and the trailer is not giving us any problems. Yeah, not bad at all. I do want to see what this thing will do off-road with this kind of trailer, because oh, these are ramps. Okay, I can't avoid this either. Come on now. Boom! Yeah. Oh, Never mind, I thought we were gonna survive that one. So yeah, you remember the obstacles I did without the trailer. Well, let's try them with and see how they go. First one up is this piece here with a little bit of a dip at the beginning, where we're more than definitely gonna lose the bull bar. That's just part of the fun of this. There she goes underneath the trailer. Up and down through these dips, not too bad, but once we get to this hill, I do feel like there may be issues, especially because I'm trying not to break anything. And the trailer immediately got stuck on a rock. That's not a good sign. Come on. Oh, she's slipping. SnowRunner tactics. Spin those wheels back and forth. Okay, I'm gonna hold it. Take off the traction control entirely. We're gonna go manual first gear. And oh, it's actually spinning the rear wheels. Come on. Yeah, this is not a true off-roader, nor is it a true trailer puller. It's sort of a compromise. So I have a technique that I use sometimes whenever I'm, not in real life, but whenever I'm trying to pull a trailer in this game. We go neutral, rev the absolute heck out of it, and then drive, and then get a little bit of momentum going in the engine. Get on up there, sport mode maybe even. Oh, this is rough. I didn't think, well, it's a lack of torque. We need low range, we need torque in order to make this happen. So, bit of a failure on my part. You can see one wheel spinning free. Yeah, apparently not possible with this. I think it's the incline, I think it has nothing to do with the rocks, and I am thoroughly disappointed. Guys, that is it. I know for sure that this thing needs more power. That is absolutely its main problem. But that's okay, it's not the end of the world. A little bit of a low-grade engine in a high-powered vehicle, at least when it comes to pulling a trailer with a 4-cylinder. You get what you can expect there. A V6 would be a lot better for this trailer towing. That being said, I think I'm done with this for now. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments, and if you enjoyed it, be sure to give me a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more. Like I said earlier, trying to hit 50k. I think we can do it today, so that would be great, but 60k is the goal for the end of the year, and then next year I'd love to hit 100 and get one of those plaques. That's honestly been my goal on YouTube since the beginning. I really want to get a YouTube plaque. That's one of those things you can kind of just hang on to forever and put it up everywhere as one of those accomplishments that very few people have. But with that little bit of destruction, I just want to say thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you again next time. Beautiful. Alright, so we have some channel members that need to be thanked, those who have chosen to support this channel for sometimes more than, yikes, some of them are getting close to 3 years, which is insane to me, and messing with my mind a little bit. But I just want to say thank you guys. So we have Overlord, QT Bear, Terria1, J. Pope, Davis Heister, The German Dude, Nat64, Sinlab, Badger, Phoenix Shark, Baja Blast, Trevor Cousin, welcome, that new person, and Goofy Plays. I appreciate you guys a lot. I'll see you again next time.